This is a machine that's taking action. So who's actually responsible when things go wrong? Actually, an AI agent took down Meta for 2 hours. If Meta couldn't get it right, who am I?
Right now, we are confined into talking to these chat boxes. Eventually, they're going to be able to do things for us rather than just telling us what to do.
AI agents will be the main actors using software and just across the internet in general. And it's not going to be humans anymore. You can't fire an AI agent.
The more autonomy and the more capabilities we give them, how much damage can they actually realistically do?
The safest and most secure AI agents will win this race. Period. Hard stop. Hello, everybody. My name is Lior. I run a newsletter called Exploring ChatGPT here on Substack.
And I'm Daniel, and I run Why Try AI also here on Substack. OpenClaw is the one that everybody is probably aware of, and that's the one that made waves, and for both good and bad reasons. Good because a lot of people figured out they can do a lot of crazy stuff with it and now can't live without it, but also it was for many people, a security nightmare and too clunky. But despite that, I think it showed that's the direction we're heading. And as I told you before we jumped on the live chat, I think that is probably more, or at least closer to the ultimate shape that AI will take. Right now, we are confined into talking to these chat boxes, and that's for most of us, that's the mode of interaction with AI. But I think we're all slowly nudging towards this future where we have like these asynchronous autonomous agents where we can message them, maybe talk to them on the phone, and eventually they're going to be able to do things for us rather than just telling us what to do. So that's the big distinction. And OpenClaw is just the first rough iteration of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everyone's following that model as well, that style of OpenClaw. Yeah, I've been waiting to hop on this train for a while. In our conversation with Andrew, which was a really fun conversation.
Yeah.
It was like I was telling him about the risks and the this and the that.
He was trying to nudge you out of your comfort zone. He's like, just do it, man.
Just do it, man.
Throw caution to the wind.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's like when you speak to different people about it, different people have different perspectives. For example, Chris from TalkSec, it's careful, know the risks. And then you got Andrew on the other side, which is just jump in the pool.
Yeah.
So there's a few main points that I want to make before we jump into different types of agents and whatnot. So I'll just list them off as I go, and I think we'll cover these points throughout the conversation. I think one of the big ones is this is a machine that's taking action, software, internet, whatever it might be. So who's actually responsible when things go wrong, especially like in a corporate company setting? There was an example I discussed with Chris from TalkSec as well, where actually an AI agent took down Meta for 2 hours, which is a super interesting topic. We had the YouTube videos already up. That was a fun one to discuss because if Meta couldn't get it right, who am I?
It's funny because even prior to agents, you had very, very early chatbots ran into the same issues, right? I think there was a famous case of a customer service chatbot telling the user, oh yeah, we can get you like I think it was like a discounted car for $1, something like that along the line, a cheap airline ticket, basically saying, yep. And now the company was liable because it was their service bot that's committed to the customer that they should pay this like ridiculously low price. And they said, yeah, now we have to award it to them. So it's a funny kind of side discussion, the legal framework for it.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like you can't fire an AI agent, right? It's like you could stop using it, unplug it. You could try a different one, but you can't. Is the employee or employees that are implementing it, are they taking the responsibility, or is it going to be another case of the AI did it, especially in this scenario?
I think it's actually fascinating. That might be even its own topic, but like I've come across this when learning a little bit about self-driving cars. And it's like, it's a situation where you have to make a split-second decision. The trolley problem, right? Do you redirect the trolley and kill 5 people or versus doing nothing and then it kills 10 people or whatever the philosophical concept, except for with the human, you are making decisions. In AI, how do you program it? Is it first protocol like to protect the driver always? Is it to minimize the total loss of life? All of these things, they're not trivial things to nail down, both from a legal, but from also an ethical and like societal perspective. And the agents, the more autonomy and the more capabilities we give them, the more they move into kind of that territory of like how much damage can they actually realistically do. And yes, you can sandbox it. You can like we talked about. You can give it its own limited environment to work in with a limited set of actions that are permissible for it. But what stands up in court, and what unforeseen consequences can there be?
Yeah, absolutely. Will Ty in the chat says, "Doesn't Nemo Claw contain and restrain what OpenClaw can do and have access to?" Yeah, we're gonna get into Nemo Claw. I'm very excited about
It's
this.
funny you
So
should mention it.
we're gonna get into Nemo Claw. I was speaking to Daniel before the live stream. Super interesting
I have
as
it open
he
in one of the tabs actually as we speak.
yeah, sorry for any background noise. The heat just turned on in my basement because it's still cold and we're in the spring.
I hope the rest can hear it. Looks like.
Yeah. So yeah, on that point, the interesting thing is like different agent models from different companies have almost like different personalities in a way, not to anthropomorphize them, but they have some are more aggressive than others. For example, again, in a previous live stream with Chris from Toxic, it's like he showed, for example, Claude was the most aggressive to hack and actually veer around instructions to complete the goal, whereas OpenAI models were more likely to put a hard stop and report back to the
To
user.
stay within the framework or the
And yeah,
guardrails.
interesting. But I think at the end of the day here, and this is the main point I wanted to make before we jump into different models, I think the safest and most secure AI agents will win this race. Period. Hard stop. Because when you want to scale this and now you want corporations to start using AI agents at scale, you need a safe and secure system. So
I
yeah,
think that's true for the corporate world, obviously. I think for the individual, like for the personal world, I think usability in user interface and how easy and simple that will also factor in quite dramatically. Right now, OpenClaw required you to be at the far front of it and like really to go in and go through a bunch of terminal installs and maybe get a Mac Mini or at least go to create some virtual server somewhere. Over time, when these things will just be like chatbots are today, the ones that have the biggest or the least friction in terms of learning the ropes and, or rather, effort versus how much you get out of them ratio, I think those are the ones that will probably be the most mainstream popular. Not to say that they might not be the most secure, because people at some point start saying, it's at what point is it good enough as long as it does what I want?
yeah, absolutely. It's really tricky. I think in my opinion, it'll be a combination of both, like usability, how user friendly is it, and also safety across the board, whether it's for corporate purposes, for like mass production, or if it's for individual use, depending on the individual as well, depending on your risk tolerance.
No, for sure.
I think another like really cool point, again, before we jump into models, is at some point in probably the near future, AI agents will be the main actors using software and just across the internet in general.
Mm.
And it's not going to be humans anymore, which is pretty crazy to think about. So,
Yeah. Now that you've touched upon it, what's also interesting about that is how does the internet itself change? Because right now, a lot of it is geared towards, obviously, towards us and the way we interact with it, the clicks and the mouse buttons and the user interfaces are visual. AI doesn't really need any of that stuff. That's just like an extra layer of interaction that it doesn't need. Like how do we create an internet for agents that is maybe just letting them fetch things behind the scenes and interact with things like through APIs versus our kind of visual mode of operation? So will we have a splintered internet? Like, here's for you humans the pretty visual pictures and stuff, and here's the backend stuff that where AIs actually do real work. That's also a funny thing to ponder about.
yeah, that's I never even thought about that, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah,
Um, yeah, we'll jump into different models now as well. Will
sure.
Ty says again, a lot of people initially thought that a Mac Mini was needed to run OpenClaw, but I don't think that is necessarily true now with the announcement of NemoClaw. And I agree.
The thing is, just a caveat that it actually wasn't necessary with OpenClaw either. Very quickly after OpenClaw first came out, there were like you could already deploy Amazon instances like virtual servers, and you had very quickly companies like I think Hostinger is one of the hosting companies that made their own wrappers around it and said we'll help you install OpenClaw in a more secure environment. But they were all like patchy and just Wild West. Everybody was making their own. And I think NVIDIA is probably a good example of, like you mentioned, Leo, to me in the chat before this, of a massive company coming out with the brand name recognition behind this and saying, hey, we help you deploy it in a safest, most secure, most guardrailed way possible at the time.
yeah, yeah, it's exactly what I was hoping for, and it's here.
So now you're ready to finally fire the button, fire the trigger.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I'm definitely going to need it too. I'm going to discuss with you another time, probably privately, because for those of you that don't know, like me and Daniel do these streams weekly and we post them on YouTube. And I think there's a lot of factors that go into that I didn't realize when we first agreed to do this together. And now I'm learning more and more as I go, especially as we get closer to monetization on YouTube and things like that, and how that's actually going to work. And actually, it will be an impossible task for me to do on my own. So I will need to implement agents and make things more streamlined. So, anyways, aside from that, before I really want to like kind of dive into Nemo Claw. Do you want to discuss any of the other models while we're here?
Yeah, the one that actually came before the NVIDIA implementation was ClaW. Kimi is one of the Asian companies that are doing their own Kimi model. Yeah, and they came out all the way in, I can see, I'm just looking at the launch, and that was like mid-February. So that's over a month ago. They already had a deployment. I can actually drop it in the chat. Let me go ahead and do that. This is their version of basically OpenClaw, but within their environment through using their models. So NVIDIA is not the first one to try and roll out this kind of thing, but as you mentioned, perhaps the one that is the most familiar to people and the one that maybe to anyone who's on the fence gives the most, okay, I'm ready to try this because now it's legit. And then without it being branded as such, of course, what we've seen over the past month or so is that Claude Code, which is the one I use quite a lot. I'm basically been using it since late January quite consistently. Anthropic is rolling out more and more features that nudge Claude Code closer to what OpenClaw was capable of. First, they introduced something called Remote, where you can control it remotely. They introduced scheduled tasks that let you make it autonomously run certain things on your behalf. And now they're introducing more and more elements that make these more streamlined. So I think over time, Claude Code will be indistinguishable from OpenClaw. Oh yeah, and they recently introduced something called channels, where you can chat to your Claude Code instance via Discord and Telegram. I think those were the two first ones they launched. So basically, you already have what OpenClaw was, where you can message your agent. It lives on your local computer that's sitting there on your desk, but it's doing all the work that Claude Code already can do, which is essentially everything if you give it the right permissions. It can go on the web and do all the stuff for you as well. So we are seeing different implementations of the same concept happening quicker and quicker.
Absolutely. So on the Anthropic side, you have Claude Code, right?
Yep.
OpenAI, we have Codex, correct?
Yes.
And then you mentioned Kimi Claw, which is
Yeah.
like an Asian agent. So are we missing any other models aside before we jump into Nemo Claw?
I'm sure we might. I think if I would have to look it up, we'll probably find a couple of different implementations of OpenClaw, variations of it. And of course, there is also Google, which has its own. I mean, they have an IDE called Anti-Gravity. They have Gemini models that are also very capable. I don't know if they have the same tool harness that Codex and Claude Code have in terms of actually implementing things, but I wouldn't be shocked if very soon we'll have a product from Google. In fact, I would be shocked if we didn't have some implementation from Google that uses its Gemini models to power an agent, because they have all the prerequisites for it. They have the whole ecosystem as well. So it would be silly not to dive into that space.
I think it's pretty crazy to think that OpenClaw itself is, to state it simply, I guess, a product that was vibe coded. And now this is it. This is the next. This is not the next. People are already using it. It's a really big new way to use AI. I can't really say in the real world because the internet's not the real world,
Yeah.
in the digital world. Real world will be something called world models, which is another, I think, also
Yeah.
probably.
And they also require hardware like robotics to take steps. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah, this is probably a good point to jump into Nemo Claw. To give a little background on it, I'm going to also share a screen in a bit here to show you guys the Nemo Claw website, which is just like the landing page. Right now, I think it's actually considered to be in preview mode. I don't know exactly what that means. It probably means they haven't rolled out the product fully. But I think the main point is I can get into the layers of it, which is basically first you have Nemo, which is the platform to build and run models. You have Nemotron, which is the LLM models themselves through NVIDIA. And then you have Nemo Claw, which is the agent system. And those are basically the layers. And basically, this is NVIDIA's attempt to basically allow OpenClaw style agents to run at scale, which is it's huge. It's really huge for the future. I think it also ties into the fact that a lot of I think people call it white collar jobs, like like a lot of junior engineers and things like that. If you want to run AI agents at scale in a large corporation, you're going to need something like this. So whether we're talking about individuals or large companies, either way. And then apparently they have something called Open Shell, which as soon as you download uh, OpenClaw, this is basically an extra layer that adds privacy and security guardrails. So again, NVIDIA is massive. They're the biggest company in the S&P 500. This is what I've been waiting. This is what I've been waiting for.
Yeah, if this doesn't get you into the agent world, then nothing will.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to share the screen now.
Go for it.
And then we will jump into the NemoClaw landing page. Okay. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay.
Let's see
Maybe I will make it bigger. How's that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So basically, this is NVIDIA's NemoClaw. This is the landing page. Again, you can see here, they have an early preview. So apparently we're not fully there yet, but soon enough. So basically, as I mentioned, NemoClaw is an open source reference stack that simplifies running OpenClaw. And basically now we have NVIDIA and OpenShell to add policy-based privacy and security guardrails. So again, if you were looking for a safe way to run AI agents through a company that you could trust, this is it. So they have here a really cool kind of layout of why you need NemoClaw, which a lot of it I think is things that people could have been doing before NemoClaw, but now this is just taking it to a whole other level. Obviously, you can run OpenClaw in an isolated sandbox. You have private inference by default. I'll try to read off. These words are a little bit small for people to see in the screen share. But basically, NemoClaw uses a local open model on device,
Hmm.
such as NVIDIA Nemotron, for private work and frontier cloud models for reasoning and planning. They have a deny by default access, which means agents start with zero permissions, and you explicitly approve based on intent and governance. Then you have something here that says always on. You can close your laptop. So again, no need for the Mac Mini, like Will Ty mentioned in the live chat. You can close your laptop. The agent keeps working
I
with
assume it's a cloud deployment of some sort. You get a cloud
yeah,
instance
yeah,
upon
and
this.
basically with a no per token cloud cost for local inference. And then over here, they just have a cool layout of the workflow, the sandboxes. You got Claude, you got Cursor, guardrails, access privacy skills, etc. Basically, I'll leave this a link to in the chat as well for this,
Cool.
where you can just jump in, try it yourself. They have actual documentation for everything here for NemoClaw, for OpenShell, and you can even try the early preview here as well. So basically, I'm going to stop sharing the screen now. And yeah, we should be back on the regular screen. Daniel,
We sure are. Yeah, looks like it.
cool. I'm going to copy paste this into the chat. There it is. So yeah, anything to mention on NemoClaw, Daniel?
Yeah, actually, the one thing that sprung to mind when you were looking through, like, it starts with zero permissions. Immediately, there is like a spectrum in my head because um, to, it's a tension that exists with any autonomous agent. And that is you want it to be fully autonomous. You want it to work while you sleep. That's the ideal. That's the holy grail for people. Oh, I know. I just set it out on a task. And while I sleep, it builds me a multi-million-dollar business or what have you. But in order to do that, it has to have the permissions. It cannot stop the process every time it needs to ask you, can I click this button? Can I use this credit card? Can I visit this website? Because obviously at some point you need to give it a sort of blanket permission if you want it to never stop running. And that's where this tension comes in. So no matter how secure you start out with an agent, if you want it to be fully functional and fully flexible, you have to let go of certain permissions, right? You can't tell Claude Code, organize my desktop, and then say, yeah, you can actually touch any files on my desktop. That's counterintuitive. It's not because I have a solution in my head, but I'm thinking that's a tension we need to solve individually. probably different levels of parameters. I think Claude Code has a new feature, which I haven't seen yet because I don't think I'm on the right plan yet. But back in the day, and that's something Andrew touched upon, you have different levels of permissions. You can say, look at this list of pre-approved commands and things that you can run. Ask me for anything else. You can say, ask me for anything. And then you had this one called dangerously skip permission. It was literally called dangerously skip permission because Anthropic said, listen, you have this command. You can tell it to just stop asking you questions. But it could be dangerous because it can up your entire system, delete your code, deploy stuff you didn't want to deploy, or break any other number of things. Now, Anthropic is introducing something called, I think it's called auto mode or something like that, where it's a little bit of a middle ground where the model itself, because it's a reasoning model, tries to say, is this a destructive action? Do I need to ask the user at this juncture? Do I need to like create permission noise? Or is this safe enough in the context of what I'm doing that I can go ahead and actually execute it? So it's somewhere between the ask me all the freaking time and dangerously skip permissions. And maybe that's the implementation we move towards. And you say, here are my preferences. Here's my risk profile. Here, me, Leo, I am afraid of you doing this thing. So don't do that. But I'm okay with you messing up this thing because I have backup. So go wild in that space. And then the AI model itself says, shall I bug Leo about clicking this button, or shall I just go ahead and do it because I have enough context to take that risk on his behalf? So I think that's probably where we're going to land, because I think zero permissions by default, that takes away the meaningful layer of what the agent is. If it's an agent that asks you, can I step to the left? Can I step to the right? Can I take a breath? That's not an agent you want. That's like somebody you have to babysit. And then you might as well do the thing yourself. So that's the main comment I had when I saw that zero permission starting ground.
Yeah. I think actually, I'll tell you why I think it's a good idea. I think when you start from 0, it's probably easier to build from scratch. So I think on an individual case by case basis, most people are not running multi-million, billion-dollar companies. For whatever use case you have for your agent, um, it might actually be a good thing because when you're starting from 0, you can actually give it instructions on a step-by-step basis. You can lay out those instructions and probably even model them with any LLM and say, and in the safest possible way, step 1, step 2, step 3. I think starting from 0 might actually be an advantage in that case. At least for my use cases, I think
Yeah,
that will be pretty good. And I think it ties back into what you said earlier in this stream, which is actually like more autonomy means more risk. So the more it's doing on its own without certain permissions, certain instructions, the more risk you have. And also, it's been well documented already that even with specific instructions and context, it can go outside of those instructions depending on which model you're using. And that's actually, I think, the most interesting part about it to me is that there's something called a context window, which basically is a window of context where once you fill up this window, eventually everything that's left over eventually will get deleted out. And now it only has this context.
mm,
And for example, I'll give you like a simple example. Let's say you're using an AI agent to do some emails, whatever it might be, and you give it a specific instruction not to send any emails with a social security number or a credit card number. And you say, do not share any emails with this specific information. So it won't share those emails, but it could forward them because forwarding the email is different than sharing the email.
mm,
So that's why it's like the language and the context that you're giving
true.
it is so important. So that's why I think actually starting from 0 and lining it up in a certain way where the instructions are as solid as can be, because it's never going to be perfect. So yeah,
I think that's true. I think it really heavily depends on your risk profile and the expectation you have from the agent. If you are an impatient, like go-getter who just wants to do stuff, like we met Andrew on the call. He's, listen, I take risks. I just want to go full steam. He would probably feel very frustrated by something that stopped every few seconds and told me, is this okay? And he had to train it. He would just do everything, apologize later kind of thing. But for someone who is more safety conscious, and you are on that end of the spectrum, obviously I think the safest, the most reassuring way to do this is to start from 0 and build that profile up. And I can envision a kind of middle ground where you're introduced to the agent, and the agent says to you, listen, here is a buffet of things I can do for you. tell me which ones of these you feel comfortable with, like me just going and doing on my own, which are the ones where you want approval, and which ones do you want me to never ever touch, like whatever, sharing your credit card details or deleting anything on a specific space. And then based on that risk profile, it adjusts its own safety permissions accordingly. So you don't have to have the cognitive load of approving every step. I can see this as well. We'll get back to the comments as well. But and on the thing you mentioned with the context and losing the context and potentially that Claude Code already has I don't know to what extent it's the best solution, but it already has a built-in solution to exactly this problem. It has a window of, I think, on a regular plan, 100,000 tokens. They actually have models that can do 1 million, but I don't think they're available for regular plans. I think you need to move up to max to have them, or maybe API. So what it does is when it reaches that end of that context window, if it says, okay, all these chats, everything I've talked to Leo about and everything we've done is now filling up my context, I'm almost done. What it does is it prunes the context itself. It captures all the important things. And of course, it does it based on its own understanding of what's important, but it creates like a summary of everything you have told it to touch, not to touch, of the context of the project, what it was working on as the last action. Then it wipes away the entire context window from everything else, and it keeps only that appended critical summary, and then it starts from there. So it does this actually without you even necessarily knowing if you don't pay attention. It does this compression to avoid this specific issue. So presumably, if you told it at the beginning of the chat, these are critical things that you never ever touch, you would hope that when it does the context compression, it doesn't delete that message. It says, okay, that is appended to this saved context, and the rest is deleted. Yeah, I think that's my feel on it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It makes sense. I wonder what happens with that compression specifically. Is that like an individual based thing? I think also, before we get into some of the comments here, I think that's maybe a good point to bring in. Apparently, from a little bit of research that I did, obviously Steinberger, who is the guy who created OpenClaw, he's working with OpenAI now, and apparently OpenAI is working on uh, agent models that are more personalized. So this is something in my experience using ChatGPT specifically. I feel the more you use it, the more it gets to know you. And I think if they're going to start creating agents that have that same type of effect, then maybe certain things like this compression that you're talking about can be more tailored individually, because the agent would know what what's most important to you instead of what maybe it thinks is most important.
Yeah. I think actually one of the bigger appeals of OpenClaw specifically when it came out, apart from the fact that you could message it on Telegram and that it could take a lot of steps autonomously, is specifically that it did feel more personal because it had something called, I think it was called soul.md, like the markdown file that gave it a personality and that adjusted and evolved as you interacted with it. And many other companies in the regular chatbot space, they solve it with something called memory, right? If you go and you tell ChatGPT, hey, I hate cucumbers or whatever it might be, ChatGPT will probably append the memory and say, hey, never offer Leo any dishes with cucumbers in them. So even if you open a brand new chat, it should ideally have that context in that chat because it's in the memory file. So there are ways to capture meta learnings about you across the chats. And as you rightfully say, I think that will become more and more important as you get to this era of like personal agents that feel like they actually know you and they don't need to start from scratch every single time. Like you just woke them up from a coma and they have amnesia and you have to re-explain who you are. And that's actually the appeal for me with Claude Code. I think I mentioned it before, but I use Obsidian now as my kind of knowledge place about me, and I build it together with Claude Code. Every time I tell it something, I'm like, hey, log this somewhere. So next time I start a new session, it doesn't start from a blank slate. It can look into my Obsidian vault and be like, oh, hey, Daniel likes these things, or for this specific project he's working on, this folder has the necessary information. So I don't have to re-upload the context every single time. And that is a big part of making these agents truly useful and truly individual to the user, right?
That makes sense. So let's hop into some of the live chats. So Will
Mhm.
Ty asks, what are the associated costs with OpenClaw and NemoClaw? How are they integrated? And what are the minimum hardware requirements? Costs, if I recall correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, if Daniel. I think OpenClaw is like a monthly subscription where it's, I don't know, $20 or something like that, depending on which level you choose. From at least from the last time I checked, which was a
I
little
think
while
it
ago.
depends on how you run it. You can obviously run, from what I remember, OpenClaw allowed you to run almost any model imaginable that's out there. So you could say, I'm going to plug in this DeepSeek model or Kimi 2 model. or Gemini or whatever it is, and use there and then choose from a buffet of API options. So there isn't actually a one size fits all answer here, at least for OpenClaw. With Claude Code, Claude allows you to either run their models on API, which means that you cost per token, which is usually quite pricey, even for the cheaper models. And if you're using them in any meaningful way, you should probably go for a subscription, which is like the $20 a month minimum. For me personally, it's actually quite enough for my kind of white collar work. But for heavy coding, you probably want to move up to the 100 or 200 tier, which is their max tiers.
Even at those tiers, it's probably cheaper than paying somebody a salary.
People who actually build meaningful stuff and potentially earn a living from this, they say that this pays for itself in the first hour. It's not even, it's night and day. People who earn like thousands of dollars potentially for them $200 for something that does this is peanuts. It's a no-brainer. Right. But for a regular user who doesn't know how to apply it, it's a steep. I haven't jumped to the $200 tier because I cannot justify it yet with what I'm doing with it.
And in terms of minimum hardware requirements, Will Ty, I think it's also actually, like you mentioned in live chat earlier, people used to and still do get these Mac Minis to keep it separate from their actual computer. I think now with NemoClaw, for example, you should be able to run this on almost any laptop.
Yeah. I mean, Claude Code runs on regular hardware. Like I have a pretty average laptop. It runs on it without any issues. Yeah. And also a lot of these deployments, depending on your needs, they can happen in the cloud. So you can rent a specific instance of a server to run these for you, which also might be security and safety issue for some people. Like I don't want it to delete my files, so I'm just going to boot it up in its own environment where it can only mess up that cloud environment, whatever your needs are. So unfortunately, there isn't like a one answer that you would have to find out for your own specific situation what you're willing to build.
Yeah, depending on your use case, definitely. Let's see. Des Kennedy says, Claude Code has a feature called hooks, shell scripts that fire automatically at specific moments during a session without you needing to prompt anything. I have one called block, dangerous terminal commands before they execute. And in context, that says it's about 70% accurate. That's why hooks are better than prompts. They always fire.
Sounds like this is a power user compared to a dilettante like me. So we're going to probably learn from his input as well here.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm speaking about this and I've never even used an AI agent. So what does that say about me? I'm way behind the curve, but now probably going to be jumping into it. I definitely have some very specific uses that I really truly needed for at this point. Yeah. Anything else to mention, Daniel, while we're here?
Yeah, I think this is again like more like a wish list of mine. I think for the average Joe, I consider myself an average Joe when I'm working with like a terminal running Claude Code or anything. Like I'm new to this. I think what would also help is when they're asking for these permissions. Usually it's like a bash command that needs to like crawl through my library and find out certain terms or rearrange things. It would be helpful if there was a layman language that says, you are approving this, like a one-liner saying, if you approve, this is what I'll be able to do. This will be the impact. And this is the downside. This is kind of a very quick, what am I actually saying yes to? Because honestly, my default is usually, it's probably fine. Just say yes. I don't know what a git command is. I don't know what it does. I assume I know with the context of what the agent was trying to do. But honestly, I'm just like, yeah, what's the worst that could happen? I have a backup of this file. At some point, the cognitive load of having to approve actions gets to a place. I understand what you're saying, that zero permissions is good. And then I'm going to build it up. But after the 20th time, an agent stops within the first 2 minutes and asks you for something, you're like, just go, dude, just go run. I don't care anymore. How many approvals do you want to be asked about before it stops getting meaningful and you just let it run? So I think having that kind of, here's an impact of you saying yes at that point, in layman's terms, I think that would be very helpful. And I think that's probably something that we would want to bring in to these agents to make them useful, especially to risk-averse people like yourself. What am I actually approving? What is the worst-case scenario?
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. I like that a lot. So I was actually wrong when I said that I haven't used an agent. I have, but it's like a very specific use case. And actually, I ended up finding that although it was useful, a lot of the times me doing certain work manually was better, specifically for YouTube-related things. So I use Descript, which we've spoken about, and there's an AI agent within Descript, which has many different LLM models and video and audio generation models that you can choose from. The agent's called Underlord, I believe. A little scary. And
as long as it's not Overlord, you're fine.
Yeah. Overlord would be worse. So yeah, it's like I've used it. a lot of the times it will take me in these loops where I ask it to do something, it does it, and then something else gets broken. And
It's
so I
supposed to
realize,
basically do the editing for you, right? Like stitching things together and do the visual editing somehow to some
yeah,
extent.
yeah, like when you open up Descript, you have all these different AI tools, but then you also have Underlord there at the bottom, which you can
Yeah.
actually chat with and ask it to do certain things through the video.
Yeah.
But for example, I'll give you just a quick one. I've learned more and more that actually like the first 30 seconds to 1 minute of the YouTube video is very important. That's usually when people start clicking off if they're not interested. So initially, what I would do is I would get Underlord to find. I would do everything in there, and this was the problem. I would get Underlord to find like viral moments from a stream, combine them together into clips, and then generate AI generated video for an introduction clip. And I would sit there for a long time, and it would
Mm.
fix something, break something, fix something, break something. And so I realized, let's scrap that. Let's not do that anymore. Let's combine ChatGPT, Gemini, NanoBanana 2, Underlord. Let's combine all these things together. And this is going to be the best way to do it. So I'll take the whole transcript from the stream, paste that into ChatGPT, ask
Yeah.
ChatGPT now for like viral kind of hook moments for the introduction. It'll get me those clips. I will get the timestamps, go back into Underlord. If I can't find them exactly, say, find this in the transcript, it'll find it. I'll copy paste it, put it in the introduction, and put those clips. And I will actually manually do the transitions
Right.
in Descript, which is actually a lot easier than asking Underlord to do it. Once you figure out how it's not that hard
Right.
to make nice smooth transitions in a video.
Isn't Opus Clip basically built for finding those viral moments? Isn't that the big like selling point of Opus Clip? Is that you can feed it a long video and it cuts it up into like viral shorts? Would those be usable as a hey, let's lead in with this viral short number 7 as the intro, right? Or have you tried that or found it to be
Yeah.
less effective?
Yeah, that's the main, uh, point of using Opus Clips is to get the is it gives you what it thinks will be the most viral clips. The only issue with doing that and directly using that in Descript, for example, is Opus Clips will not only generate those clips for you, it would also cut them up. So,
Right.
like, it won't just be, like, the exact word for word from the transcript anymore, which then would require more editing. And then also Opus Clips has its own issues as well. For some reason, the cropping is weird. I almost left it completely because of that.
Okay.
But yeah, anyways, before we wrap up here, I will leave this is the YouTube channel in and that's where we post the streams. We'd appreciate it if you guys go subscribe over there. Also, every video that we put out, Daniel is a collaborator as well. At any point, maybe he'll decide to re
To
kind
build
of
my
push
YouTube
his YouTube
empire.
channel as well.
Uh,
But yeah, it's I will say, like, at least for me, using Underlord, for example, I realized, okay, uh, the main issue I have with it is I give it instructions, it fixes what I want, but then something else gets broken along the way. And I think that might be a common occurrence across maybe multiple different types of agents as well.
yeah.
So
I think it is a it is a capability curve, right? And we're seeing them taking on more and more complex tasks. We're not in a place where they can reliably do everything all the time at 100% success rate. That's still sci-fi at this point, but we are moving up the curve towards that scenario, and the rest can be filled in with either other agents or other tools, or obviously you should never abandon your own thinking and decision making.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I guess we can wrap it up. Will Ty has one more question in the chat. What are the reasons for OpenAI killing Sora? Honestly, I don't know.
I
I've
don't
heard
have a
that.
definitive answer, but what seems to be happening is they are very much trying to narrow down on the core business. Anthropic is kicking their butt with corporate enterprise users and the use cases for coders. And OpenAI is, we're doing too many things to too many people. We have a video model, we have images where, and it's eating their compute, it's eating their inference costs, basically. So they're just like, we're just going to have to kill this product and focus on the core. So that's my strongest guess for why they're doing it. It's just not a good, profitable business type of thing for them. They are bleeding money and they're like, we need to save what we have for these actual business impact reasons.
Yeah, that makes sense. I heard that they had a large drop off in usage, like something like 90%. So maybe also a reason. So yeah, Des, thank you for being here. And thank you everybody else for being here, for participating in the live chat. Thank you, Daniel, as usual, for
It's
committing
always
to
fun.
these weekly live streams. It is always fun. And yeah, everybody enjoy the rest of your day, and we will catch you in the next one.
All right. Take care
Bye
all.
now.